Hi again, everybody. So in this tutorial, we're going to be looking at TyFlow Voxel mapping, where you start to create some really variable massing on a site, and that all follows a plane. So here's one that I prepared earlier. What you can then do is pull that into Ladybug and get some really nice graphic kind of visualizations like this, which start to show you where the sun is hitting all the surfaces. So what I'm going to do is turn these ones off and we'll get started. We'll leave the plane on, but I'm going to turn off my TyFlow objects. So the first step to doing all of this is you need to export a Heatmap from Ladybug, or it could be some other sort of Heatmap software. The key thing here is that you want to get the right combination of colors. So this was generated, if I jump into perspective view, this was generated based on this hybrid building that you see here, where we've combined a combination of a U tower with a Y tower. Kind of ends up looking something a bit like a Star Wars spaceship, but it's just for the purposes of this exercise mainly. What we've then done is run that through the Ladybug direct sun hours script, and it produces this nice heat map output. So as I was saying before, so the default that it comes out as is, we'll just wait a couple of seconds for this to change the colors. So the default that it comes out as doesn't get picked up too well with TyFlow. So this combination of colors doesn't work very well for TyFlow. So what we want to do is change that to a 3. You can see all the different color combinations in here. So we're going for the Ecotect color combination, and that will match up really nicely with how we want our terrain mesh to displace in TyFlow. There we go. Come into my top view, go view capture to file, save that out. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to open up that file or that image, sorry. And I want to crop it down because there's a lot of broader context bit mapping here that I don't need. So I want to change it so it's all perpendicular to the crop, and then we'll crop it down. It's best if you come just on the inside of the property boundary so that you get a really nice, neat outcome. Okay, so we'll save that. That's basically what you want to be bringing into 3ds Max for your TyFlow aspects of this. So we'll jump into 3ds Max. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to clone this plane here. This is one that I generated earlier based on this T-tower. I'll now turn that T-tower off, seeing as it's not so relevant anymore. And I'll clone that plane. So we'll go clone it as a copy. That's really important. And just name it plane 2. And And the next step is to jump into your material editor. And this is one that I've set up based on the one that you already see. But essentially you want to start with the basic physical material. I can pull, I'll start this from scratch, pull that in. Then you also want to bring in this one here, which is your bitmap. And that's going to ask you which bitmap heatmap image you want to use. So we'll grab this one, and then what have we got as base color map? So you want to connect those two up. We then want to go assign material to the selection, and that'll get it coming up on your plane. Now, the reason that this is all, sort of offset at different heights is because it's got a displace modifier attached to it. So what you can do if you haven't got that on your plane already is just go into the modifier list and select displace, which is this one here. You then can modify the strength of the displacement, and I'll turn that one off so we can see, and maybe the ground plane as well, so we can see the extent that it's displacing. So you can do that to varying levels, probably about that will do. And now your next step is that you want to open up TyFlow. You can do that by coming back into your standard create primitives and create a TyFlow here. Doesn't necessarily matter where you place these TyFlow icons, but you can come in and open up your TyFlow editor. Now there's one that I was using earlier, which is this TyFlow 3. That was to create this image here. So what I'm going to do is just copy and paste all of that. Best if you do it with the right clicking, as Control-C, Control-V is not necessarily working. And then what you want to do is you basically want to reference in the plane that we created with the bitmap mesh. So we'll go select that, go add selected, and use plane 2, so we can remove plane 1. We then, these elements here don't matter too much for now, but what is really important is the shape that we use. So what we want to do is to, in this next step, is generate a shape that you want to reference in that will become your TyFlow particle. So here's one here that we used for the previous example, and basically it's a if we jump across to the editor, a 5 by 5 by 5 box, and we've gone 5 by 5 to match the pixel size on the bitmap image. So that's already referenced in, so that's all good. If it wasn't referenced in, you can just go add selected, and that'll reference that in. We then can play a little bit around with these settings, but what we're going to do is just get it mapping straight up for starters. So we also, again, want to make sure that we have our plane 2 as our mapping object, and then we can come into display, and we want to go display mode geometry. Now there's one really crucial step that I should have done before opening up my TyFlow, and that is that under the displacement modifier, we want it to displace according to the same map. So at the moment, it's displacing according to the previous one, the previous example. But what we want it to do is to displace according to this kind of Star Wars sort of jet fighter here. So we'll remove that map, and then we'll add in the correct one, which is this one here on this list. And there we go. That displacement's coming off a lot better, and we might increase this slightly or decrease it depending on what sort of height variability we want between those elements. So we can now come back into our TyFlow, and we can turn this on. And you can see that it pretty much automatically starts to generate that massing. Now, one of the elements that is quite good to modify to sort of get some variability is this scale. So if you have that ticked off, you kind of just get this like big block massing, but scale will control the size of it really nicely. Frequency doesn't do a heck of a lot, but the variability also starts to break up the sort of homogeneity of the massing. So you can play around with that, taking it to different scales if you want to, but generally leave it at 100 and then start to play around with this. Now the next step is to get it to integrate really nicely into the rest of your context. So we'll close that and turn our context layer back on. And then it's really just about playing around with the height. So we obviously don't want anything in this blue section here. So it's best if we kind of adjust the height so that that stays below the plane and then everything else is above. Now the nice thing here is that we can continue to adjust that height, but what we then need to do is come back into our TyFlow Voxel editor, and we just need to re-link those planes because it doesn't automatically update them. And we can see how that adjusts. And it's the same here as well. So then we might bring that down again. So that's got some nice variability there. So I'm fairly happy with how that's looking. I might try to get a little bit more variation through modifying the variation panel a little bit. And maybe also playing with that up and down. That's quite good there. It's sort of dropped it down so that, you know, on the corners we've got some slightly higher massing than the rest. So our next step is that we want to remove our next step before we do anything is to export these TyFlow particles. So you just use the export particles command that you can find down along the bottom command options here. And you want to make export mode objects. Frame doesn't really matter too much. And you want to select meshes. So then we go to generate objects from particles. So then we can turn this off and it's just going to show those mesh objects there in blue. If we jump out of this viewport and into our horizontal viewports, we can then delete all of those below the plane. and we should be left really nicely with what we want on top. So our next step is to start to organize things a little bit and then prepare things for export. So we've got quite a few individual layers for all of these TyFlow meshes that I've just exported. So we want to bring them into a new layer. So massing export. So now we've got really good control over exactly what it is that we want to export. So we'll turn the plane off. Actually, the plane can stay on for now. That can come with us. And we'll basically select that. Export selected. And we want to export as a 3ds Studio file, which can be really nice for bringing back into Rhino. So then we jump back into Rhino and we want to import the file. We've obviously got a scale mismatch going on here. That's okay. What we're going to do is we probably don't need that mesh, so we'll delete that. And then all of these are currently as meshes. So and we're going to convert, go mesh to nib. Those out. So here's all of our poly surfaces. We need those to run off the direct sun hours ladybug analysis again. And we'll move these here to the site and start to scale them up. So we've obviously had a scaling issue here because of the difference in unit settings between files. So that's an important one to set up right from the start. Pretty good. Rotate them around a little bit and sort of bring it to sit within the site boundaries. And then what we can do is start to redistribute some of these ones. Okay, so it's looking pretty good. Now what we can do is turn our tower back on, and we see that that's fitting in pretty nicely. We might need to neaten these up a little bit more. Maybe we'll even start to align them to the existing massing. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now what we are going to do from here is bring it back into Ladybug so that we can get a really nice visualization like this. So what we're going to do is use our geometry selectors to select the geometry that we want our colors, our data visualization colors to come up on. So we'll go set multiple geometries and we'll select what's here. And then we want to set our context geometries, which should include the surrounding buildings as well. Now, for some reason that's not liking it. Polycurve object has no attribute vertices. It's because I think we've got our site curve still on. So try this one again.
And there we have it. So we'll turn off the layers of what we already had on, and our hybrid building, and we can start to see how that's shaping up, and we can see the impact that the voxel mass, the TyFlow massing is having back on the rest of the building. So that's that one. Thanks for watching.